Good afternoon. My name is Corwin Cobb, and today I will discuss the effects of the loneliness and isolation epidemic in America. According to the United States Census Bureau survey on how Americans report feeling lonely, 40.3% selected sometimes, often, or always. The absence of social interaction and loneliness in urban areas affects the quality of life beyond recognition. Loneliness and isolation were named a national epidemic in 2023, as lacking social connection is as dangerous as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. Increased social interaction has many physical and mental health benefits. However, isolation in small doses can encourage self-reflection and personal growth, specifically when a balance between social interaction and isolation is reached. Overall, the loneliness and isolation epidemic is a pressing issue, and if nothing is done to improve mental health, then lives are at risk. This leads me to my research question. To what extent does communal social interaction affect the lifespan of individuals in urban areas? To answer this question, a scientific perspective must be taken into account. Elizabeth Ross, journalist for Harvard University, assesses a Harvard survey that measured the age groups that are most likely to be lonely and found that 21% of adults reported serious feelings of loneliness, while ages between 30 and 44 years old were the most lonely, and ages 18 to 29 were the second loneliest. However, adults aged 65 and older reported the lowest rate of 10%. In connection with Ross, Holly Wojcik, writer for the University of Pennsylvania, highlights how age, vision, and hearing affect loneliness. Most older Americans often live alone and have lost close family and friends to old age, and may be dealing with conditions such as chronic illnesses, poor eyesight, and hearing loss. These factors make it harder to go out and spend time with others. Health issues can impact social isolation rates, as it's not easy for everyone with mental health issues and physical health issues to go out and socialize, while social isolation itself is associated with physical and mental health issues. A sociocultural perspective must also be used. The isolation and loneliness epidemic in America is rooted in the shift of cultural norms. Marriage and birth rates are near an all-time low, while religious affiliation has declined from 70% in 1999 to 45% in 2024. Similarly, from 2003 to 2020, the average American's time spent with friends decreased by 2/3, and time spent in social isolation increased by 17%. Social life and connection in America are declining each year. American social and civic life was once defined by diverse clubs, groups, and organizations. However, it has declined by every conceivable measure since the mid-20th century. Likewise, Americans have smaller social networks and fewer friends. They spend less time with their friends and neighbors and family members. In fact, more than 1 in 5 Americans live in communities with no access to commercial public spaces, nowhere to talk or meet with their neighbors. With the changing demographics in America, it's no surprise that more and more Americans are feeling lonely and depressed. Without the affiliation to religious groups, social clubs, and friend groups that America's social life was built on, many adults feel lonely. After recognizing the complexity of the issue, I developed 2 potential solutions. The most promising solution is to build more places where people can gather and socialize in the community, such as parks, coffee shops, bars, and community centers. Emily Sanford, journalist for PR Newswire, affirms that small changes in behavior, like having weekly get-togethers with friends or calling family members instead of texting, are associated with meaningful improvements in social health. This bar graph shows common leadways to death and how it compares to lacking social connection. The Office of the Surgeon General created this graph. Here you can see that lacking social connection is more dangerous alcoholic drinks a day. Physical inactivity, obesity, and air pollution are all less dangerous than lacking social connection. The limitations of solution 2. This solution has some limitations, as funding for these buildings does not come for free. Fundraisers and charity events will be necessary to raise the funds for these buildings. Another limitation is that even if towns build these places for people to go and gather and socialize, there's no guarantee that people would even use them. Some people have social anxiety or are just introverted and don't like going out to public spaces. If towns across America don't take action now, then there's no telling how many Americans will face the deadly consequences of social isolation and loneliness. Since the list of limitations outweighs the implications, I developed a stronger solution. Another possible solution that towns and cities across America should create would be the additional creation of more social support groups, so people going through depression and loneliness can attend, whether in person or virtually through social media. Social groups bring people closer together, as the vulnerability aspect of support groups often form friendships across membership leaders. By implementing more public spaces for socializing and creating social support groups, towns across the country would be able to see a change in their citizens' lives. Understandably, not everyone has a big social battery to go out all the time, but those who really need mental health help should be able to have easy access and accessible resources. The addition of social support groups gives people struggling with loneliness that option. Again, creating social support groups would take funding and volunteering. By creating social support groups, towns and cities in America can expect reduced rates of loneliness and depression, and as a result, see happier and less stressed citizens. Overall, the problem is causing an increased risk for early death to American citizens, and without changes made to the community, millions of Americans will face the consequences that loneliness and isolation can bring. These are the evidence and sources I use to help develop my art. Are there any questions?
Yes. Okay, so what information did you need that you were not able to identify or locate, and how did you go about trying to find that information?
Some information that I wasn't able to locate that would have been very helpful during the research process would be firsthand testimonies about loneliness and isolation. I looked for multiple firsthand accounts about the effects that loneliness and isolation can have on humans, but it was hard to find a personal testimony specifically speaking about that.
Thank you. And what advice would you have for other researchers who consider this topic?
One piece of advice I would have for other researchers who consider this topic would be to look beyond emotions and look at the biological and social consequences of social isolation